Hello and welcome everyone to the Cougar Culture Podcast. I am your host, Dorian Alert. I am one of the commentators for Kean Athletics as well as the sports editor for The Tower, which is the university's newspaper. I'm so excited to be starting this podcast with Kean Athletics. But I'm not alone. Everyone knows his voice. You love him. He is one of my broadcasting partners. I'm joined by Jish Sokolsky. How you doing, man?
What's up, everyone? It is Kane's favorite high school senior on the mic tonight with my good friend Dorian Alert. We're in for a good first episode here today. Can't wait to jump right into it. What about you, Dorian?
I'm excited, man. But real quick, before we start, how was your Thanksgiving?
I had a good Thanksgiving. You know, I went to a distant family member's house, had some good food, you know, filled up with the turkey, the filet. It was all good. How about you?
It was good until I saw my Cowboys lose.
Yeah, well, you know, as is the case, I had to see my Eagles lose at the end of the weekend too. So both of us going through some rough patches. But yeah, man, let's get this underway.
Of course. So our first segment will be called After the Whistle. During this segment, we'll be discussing the weekly recap of everything that happened in this previous week in Kean Athletics. Would you like to start with men's basketball?
Oh, for sure. So we had a great doubleheader. Harwood Arena was electric for the men and women playing Montclair State on last Tuesday, November 23rd. The men won by a score of 105-94. That box score is a little deceiving. The men were basically blowing out the Red Hawks almost the majority of the game. At one point in the third quarter, they were able to bring it within 5, but the men quickly pulled ahead. You've probably seen the highlights on Twitter. Jalen Jamison with these fancy no-look passes, some deep threes, some great contributions from players all across the bench.
It was an incredible game to call. I really enjoyed it. It was exciting throughout. We saw Kendall Blunt start off absolutely
red
on
hot
fire. He scored the team's first 7 points. Absolutely incredible. And,
absolutely, a microwave right from the start.
Oh yeah, and Nate Lyles too.
Mm-hmm.
He 4-point play. Oh man,
I'm telling you right there that what I saw out there from Nate Lyles is something I've only seen from like Kevin Garnett. The way he can just sky up and shoot that jump shot, even with a hand right in his face, getting the buckets to fall, even with heavy contests. He had a 4-point play at one point in the game, nailing a 3-pointer and the foul. Just incredible stuff we saw from Nate Lyles, and also, of course, from Latrell West, the leading scorer that night. He was just absolutely a leader. I believe he scored a double-double, if I'm not mistaken.
He did. He had a double-double. It was really funny when we started discussing. We were like, all right, when is Latrell going to start scoring? Because we know he can score.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he, like you said, microwave. He picked it up and ended up being the team's leading scorer. I believe he was the leading scorer for everyone on the floor that night.
26 points for Latrell West.
Yeah.
Great stuff we saw from him. And on to the women, of course, they played the earlier game that day. They won by a score of 69-61, getting their third win of the season, starting to bounce back. They started off, I believe, at 1-4. Now at 3-4. They're definitely rebounding.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to talk to Coach King afterwards, and she mentioned Montclair is a very good team. They always seem to get them in the third quarter, but they bounced right back, scored 32 points in the fourth quarter, and closed that one out. It was a big comeback victory.
Mm-hmm. It was a relatively quiet offensive game in the first half. I believe the halftime score was 24-17, and then both teams took turns exploding. Montclair State in the third quarter had 29, and Kean in the fourth quarter had 30. So, speaking of double-doubles, of course, Shannon McCoy got herself a double-double, 20 points, I believe 10 rebounds, almost on triple-double alert, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Yeah, Shannon, absolutely explosive. She was hitting threes, but Sarah Olivero came along too, had a lot of key steals. And they've just been extremely exciting to watch. And even Macy Seaman came off the bench.
Oh
and
yes.
provided 8 points. She went 4 for 4 shooting, and 4 blocks.
Yeah, and making some key defensive rebounds down the stretch. That's what Coach King was telling us. She's really excited by the development of the 6'3" freshman, and she'll be a star for years to come for this Cougar squad. As for swimming, Kean had to take on 2 Division I scholarship programs the Saturday before those games. They lost both matchups, unfortunately, but it was really, really close.
Again, you and I were on the call for that one, Jish. And there were a couple times where we were just blown away by the way they were swimming in the water. Absolutely incredible stuff. Tegan Powell, her performance in that one earned her NJAC Rookie of the Week for swimming.
Of the week.
The team has a lot of talent, and I'm really looking forward to watching them grow.
Yeah, and speaking of Tegan Powell, Coach was telling us before the meet, that she could have broken, I believe, the 100-meter breaststroke record, school record. And that's really what Coach Swenson has been doing ever since he's arrived. He's been setting records and breaking his own records. And it's really impressive what he and the assistant coaches, the entire coaching staff here at Kean has done with the team.
Of course. And, his coaching staff brings a lot of pedigree and a lot of experience to the pool. And that was something that the entire team was excited about, the fact that they have a former Division I swimmer in Lexi Brewer and a former Olympian in Matea Semzardic as coaches. And, they bring certain things that will help them improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Enough can't be said. It was shocking. We had some Kean swimmers even come in first place for these events, which is, obviously what you want, but not necessarily to be expected against scholarship programs.
Kean's got some excellent swimmers, and just excellent athletes across the board.
You're right about that.
Coming up next, we have a little segment we like to call Cougar Quick Hits. In this segment, we'll be discussing with Kean athletes their performances on the court, field, or in the pool.
You're not going to want to miss it.
Definitely not. For our first segment, we will be bringing in a couple of members for the ECAC championship winning women's volleyball team, and as well as head coach Don Perkins. So we are now joined by women's volleyball head coach Don Perkins. How are you doing, Coach? You had a very successful season. It started off a little bit rough. The team was 5-9 at one point heading into October, but October the team had a phenomenal run, shutting out 7 of their opponents as well as winning 9 of your games. What went into such a successful run throughout the month of October?
We had a really young team, and even though our sophomores hadn't really been through a full year of experience. So, we had 6 people in their first regular season, their first full season, that were in our day-to-day lineup, and 5 or 6, and depending on what we did that day. And, we played some really good teams in the fall, and some of them we knew NYU was going to be good. We know Cleveland was going to be so good. They ended up being the number 2 team in New York region. So, Baltimore was good. That was a good win for us early in the season. Our girls knew that we could play really good volleyball. We had trouble finishing early on, and kind of that you get a lead and you're up 22-20, and it seems like we caught a million of those. And but you gotta crawl before you can walk. You got to walk before you can run. And this team had to cough up a few leads before they realized what was involved in winning Division III games, winning games in the college level, and making an impact. The first part of the season, it was Marine who won their league, it was Cortland who won their league, it was NYU who won their league, it was Wesleyan who was top 25 at some point for a good chunk of this of their part of this of the season. Penn State Barron won their league. There was just a bunch of really good teams, and we learned from every one of them. And I think that the New Paltz is always a really good team. Hunter won their league. Things kind of around. We just got enough, calluses and scar tissue, I guess, to and learned enough lesson that we were able to kind of turn the tide on some of those matches. And I think New Paltz is a match that we probably would have lost if we played that 3 or 4 weeks earlier. But at that point in the season or any point past that, our girls had we're here again. Well, we know what to do now. We've been here before. And so Drew was won a lot of games. They beat Montclair. They beat Paltz. They beat Stockton. And we never let them get off the mat. Our girl, didn't look like a competitive match, but it wasn't a competitive match because we never let them string 2 or 3 points together. We kind of, we stayed focused and so well that wasn't that impressive. You won by a lot or whatever, but like that's how impressive it was for me, was that we never let them get the ball rolling. And Rowan is by all accounts the best team in the league this year. When they came to our place in the end of October, we gave them everything they could handle. But we had match point and we made 2 mistakes that we didn't need to make. So, there's still some youth in there. There's still, we're still, gaining that experience that you need to be successful. But what we were able to do on talent and enthusiasm and just ability, while we put together those, get that experience under our belt, what we were able to do without it was really, I thought, impressive. And I'm really happy with the way this team performed this year.
And, afterwards, I know the team was a little bit bummed about the way the season ended, but you did go on to play in the ECAC championships. You played Alfred State in the first round, and I believe you won three sets to 1. And then you went on to play Rutgers Camden for the 3rd time that season. And for lack of some better words, Rutgers Camden just cannot stop the team, especially players like Ann Beckmeyer. Can you just speak about what it meant to play Rutgers Camden again, and then speak on what Ann and some of the other players meant in that championship?
Well, first, I'll just go back to ECACs for a second, and that's something Lakeitha Murray came in and said, "Is this something you want to do?" And I hadn't even thought of it. It wasn't something I thought was going to be available to us. So I really want to thank the administration for proposing that as an opportunity for us. The way our season ended with a championship ECAC versus how our girls thought the season was going to end after the rowing game, the tears and heartfelt, the heartbreak from a heartfelt loss, to lifting a trophy 8 days later was night and day. And I think the motivation that gives us going into the off season and kind of how they view the whole shape of the season changes based on the ability to do that. So I really want to thank our administration for making that available to us. I just so much of a better experience overall. Alfred State was, I think, 19-3 or something, that they hadn't played a lot of teams on our level. But when you watch them play bad teams, it's like, well, that's what a great team would look like, playing a bad team. So we didn't know what we were getting into. They won the first set. We had just gotten off the bus, but we settled down and played really well. Morgan Hall had a big night and played well. Ashley finished the season really strong, and including at ECAC. The team looked good, and we felt pretty good. We'd beaten Camden twice and whatnot. And then had won 7 games. In the last 10 games, they were 7-3, and all 3 losses were to us. So they were a good team. They had an interesting mix. They had like 6 seniors and like 5 freshmen. So I guess freshmen and sophomores, right? But again, the sophomores are still in their first real season too. And so including the rookie of the year, who was an All-American for the rookie of the year for the NJAC. And so that's a good team. And when you have freshmen like that on the court, like, well, are they going to get better? And their middle certainly did, from the first time we played them to the 3rd time we played them. Was it her getting to see what Ann and Kayla were doing, or other things they were? I don't know, but she got a lot better. But for some reason, you know, just a bad matchup for them. You know, what we do and what they do, just the scale kept leaning our way. And ours worked hard to make sure that it stayed that way. Camden worked really hard. Like I said, they did improve. And did some things that they, you know, by the third game, they made some adjustments that they didn't make in the first game. We have to come back and make adjustments, and you know, making adjustments is a veteran thing. And so, like I said, you know, we had a young team, so the end of the season to make adjustments and be able to do those things really said a lot about our progress over the course of the season. You know, Anne was on, like, defensively had 12 blocks against Camden the first time. Offensively, she was at an average night second game. And then the third game, it was really, really good. And I think her numbers were even better in the third set. I think she made a couple errors in the third set after the game was kind of out of reach that made her numbers a little more pedestrian than they really were. She's a freshman who doesn't play like a freshman anymore. You know, I mean, her, you know, if I went back to the video, or if I had a practice video, I could probably circle a moment, because it just seems like a light went off in her head at some point around mid-September. And she's like, oh, I got this. And, you know, started hitting better shots and started closing blocks and just had a better attitude, optimistic attitude about, you know, what she could accomplish. You know, that we have for 3 more years. I'm a little excited about that, you know? She's a great kid, wonderful student, incredible artist. You know, and that's a lot of our girls have, you know, other things to do pretty well too. And Anne's is art. And, you know, I think as much as we're going to appreciate the heck out of her volleyball abilities for the next 3-4 years, I think the world's going to get to know her as an artist for, you know, many years beyond that. So.
All right, we are now joined by the 2021 women's volleyball team, members of the women's volleyball team, Gwen, Hangey, Kayla, Thornton, Kylie, Brua, and Ashley Smith. How are you doing this evening?
Amazing.
Doing good.
Very good.
So you had an incredible season. You wrapped up the season going on a tear, of course, winning ECAC championships. How did that feel? Because I know ECAC championships were something that, you know, the team was not sure was even going to happen.
I mean, after ending our season with NJAX and everything not going our way, I feel like going into ECACs was like almost a new beginning, because we thought our season was over. So it was really good for us to get back on and like just to play more, because we always want to play more. We never really want to stop. So it was good for us to get back on our feet again and win that whole entire tournament.
Another thing to note, you guys had such a comeback story. You started 5-9, and then in the month of October, you won 10 of 12, going on a 9-game win streak. Of course, do you want to speak on the mentality going like off of that 4-game losing streak into the winning streak?
That definitely was a hard time on our team. Nobody likes losing, and we all love winning. So we all kind of got together in the locker room, had a little sit down, and we're like, okay, this is what needs to change, and this is what we're going to do, because we are great and we are very good, and this is what we need to do to be very good. So we kind of just had a little sit down, team gathering, and changed our mentality, got back out there, worked so hard on that court and on and off both courts, and then got out there and we started playing our game.
For sure. And, you know, part of that game was between Kayla and Ashley. Both of you went on incredible, just hitting percentage wise, incredible runs, especially Kayla, because you were named Division III All-American. What was that honor like when you were named All-American?
I was amazed. That's not something I expected to ever get. I never really paid attention to my stats. So when coach told me, I was like, oh, wow, like, April Fools, that's funny. And then he was like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, oh, cool. But yeah, I never expected to ever win anything like that. So that was a really cool experience.
Another thing is how young this team is. Ashley, you're only a sophomore, basically a COVID freshman, as some people call. And, you know, the freshmen on your team, of course, Ann and Taylor both showed out, had very, very impressive rookie seasons. But Ashley, I think you have a very bright future ahead of you. You were an offensive powerhouse this season. What is your opinion on the future of this team?
I'm really excited. We have everyone returning, so obviously this year didn't go quite how we wanted it to, but I think it's going to be such a motivation for us because we kind of got a taste of like how good we can be and what we can do. And with everyone returning and then even more recruits coming in, I think I'm really excited for this next season. I think it's going to be really good to see how much we grow and how much we can build, having a little more experience and having our freshmen and younger players even step up too.
What does this season mean to you, and moving forward, what is the goal?
This season was, I think, a setup for next year. I think we built those relationships and we built the chemistry with each other. And I think that we're going to pick up where we left off for next year. And I think we have a very, very good chance at taking NJAX. So I'm excited.
I definitely agree with Kayla. Last year with COVID and everything, we didn't really have a full team most of the time. So coming back to this, like normalcy almost was very refreshing. But we still were very young and we still were kind of like figuring out like who we were as a team and like what we had to offer. And now that we know what we have to offer and what we can do, next year is just going to be absolutely amazing.
I agree with both of them. Last year, because of COVID, it was not a normal season and we almost had not a full team. So I don't really know if I can consider that a season. So this is almost my freshman year. So it was just like, it's super exciting to be so young and being like, okay, we have the same team next year. And if this is what we can do this year, like the sky's the limit next year.
I mean, I agree. I think our goal is always to win NJAX, but after being so close this year, I think it's going to be huge next year, seeing everything that we can do, everything we're building off of, taking right off. I mean, everyone kind of has found their roles on the team, knowing like where they fit, what they can do. And I'm just really excited. I think we have a really big chance next year.
Thank you for still tuning in. This is still Kean Cougar Culture, the podcast you don't want to miss for your fixture of all Kean sports. Our next segment is going to be called Beyond the Competition. Basically, we take one featured guest every week and we want to pick their brain and really get a feel for what their philosophy is going forward.
And now it's time to take it beyond the competition with Kean's very new cross-country head coach, Danielle Todman.
We are now joined by head coach for the cross-country team, Danielle Todman. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on today. So jumping right into it, our first question, we did a little research. You ran at Bucknell. You were really successful at a D1 college level. You know, not many people can say that. So we just wanted to know a little bit, what inspired you to join the Air Force out of school instead of trying to pursue this professionally?
That's a good question. I needed to join the Air Force because of certain things that were going on in my life, right? And I was like, I'm not staying in New Jersey because there was a lot of life situations that happened. And I needed to just find a way to find myself and grow myself. And at first I was thinking about doing the Coast Guard. And, you know, that kind of got funny with the paperwork and the length of time it took. So then I started doing my research, and the Air Force better suited me. So that's where I took the Air Force. And I was still pursuing, you know, the dream of chasing the Olympics or worlds and stuff during track, but that kind of found me through the Air Force. So
yeah, thank you.
So speaking a little bit on your success at Bucknell, you do still hold top 10 records in the 55-meter dash, the 55-meter hurdles, and the shuttle hurdles relay. What was your time like at college, and what did you take away from your running days?
My time at Bucknell, it was very humbling, right? So I am thrown in with a lot of people that are very good, right? So in high school, you're used to being top 1 or 2 or top 3 in your school and your particular event. But then when you're among the cream of the crops of the cream of the crops, it forces you to elevate, right? So in that time, I learned how to elevate and not compete against your teammates, because your teammates are going to sharpen you. Iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. So I learned how to sharpen my teammates, and my teammates sharpen me while being better and winning championships and forcing each other to run faster. I'll give you an example. My teammate, Catherine Trennicos, and I were in the 55-meter hurdle final, right? And she and I were neck and neck. And we weren't the fastest in this final, right? So she looked at me, I looked at her, I said, this is about to be quick, right? But we didn't think we were going to be number 1, number 2 in the school, right? We came number 1, number 2 in the school at the time. But that was the mindset of Bucknell. Was like, we had some phenomenal athletes that I can tell you won Patriot League championship, 500 meters. We went 1, 2, 3, and 5. And I'm just like, what is going on? But that just was the testament of, I don't care where your level is, I'm going to level you up. So I learned the art of how to level up without competing against somebody that wears the same uniform as me. Right? So we are celebrating each other and the uniqueness of how they run, and that's going to, maybe that's their strength, and maybe that was my weakness, but we carried each other, and we used our strengths to help each other become stronger. So
For sure. And along with being a runner, you also are a champion power lifter. So you told us a little bit, but how did you get into powerlifting?
Oh man, powerlifting came in when I was deployed, right? So there was this guy in the gym. He was like, do you lift? I said, no. Right? I said, I work out. I don't lift. He was like, I think you could be a good powerlifter. And people in the gym were like, do you know who he is? Like, who do you know who he is? I said, no, we're in the middle of the desert, right? And we're not wearing a uniform right now because we're in the gym. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who he is, right? So then I see him again. He fixes 3 things with my deadlift, and the deadlift was easy, right? He's pinging me, like, I think you should powerlift. Long story short, he gets me into this competition, and I get to go to Costa Rica and compete. Not a powerlifter, but I came a second. And he was like, you gotta stop hiding your strengths and stop shrinking, right? He said, your shrink is not serving you and your future athletes who you're gonna coach, right? And that thing hit me, right? So then he was like, I think you qualify for Worlds. 2020 got canceled, so we had to re-qualify. So qualified to go to Worlds. Crazy performance at the World. Hit my PR, and that's what got me into powerlifting. That's just long story short. But he told me not to shy away from your strength, right? And a lot of times we're afraid to be, right? Because we naturally want to fit in. That's just human nature.
Yep.
But you're naturally going to fit in, and people are going to find you when you walk in your strength of your talent, right? And then that's where you grow.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. You certainly didn't shy away from your strength. First place in the Robert Massey Classic back in 2020. First place in your first ever military national championship back in 2018. You really have put yourself out there, and that's very admirable. We just want to know exactly what brought you to Kean.
What brought me to Kean was I got a phone call. And I met with Mr. Kelly, and he told me that the program we were going to rebuild this program. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And, he told me to think about it. We interviewed. I saw the campus. I'm like, yeah, right. So did I think I was going to get the job? No. Yeah, because so the weird thing is I only have assistant coaching position, like experience. I have head coaching experience in other things in the military, but in track and field, I have a lot of assistant coaching. So the fact that I was trusted to build this program is an honor. So it kind of just like fell in my lap that I'm here. So I'm looking forward to it.
We also see that outside of competing, you mentor children with special needs. So do you care to tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, that came when I was subbing, because I knew that I was going to teach, and I knew that teaching and coaching was my passion. My plan was to coach college after and teach after I retired from the military, but that came earlier, so I'm blessed. But I was asked to help out with the special needs class, and there was a kid who was nonverbal. They misclassed him as behavioral. So I realized, I'm like, the only time he's act out is when he is being asked to say things. So I was like, yeah, he's nonverbal. It's not that he's bad, right? So one day he was trying to communicate, and I asked him to show me, right? And that changed the game, because no one asked him to show him like what what he was talking about. So he will point at something. I'm like, no, not now, or yes, later after you do this. So in time, we worked on his verbal. So we sat down every day. He used to get like 10 minutes of playtime when he first got in, and then we worked for 10 minutes, and then at time he sat and was easy to, like, he felt more comfortable in a group. So then out of nowhere, this kid just starts talking. I'm like, what? I was like, Georgie, so every day off the bus, comes running, gets me a hug, and tells me what toys he's playing with, when he got home, what big slide he went on. And I'm like, okay. So then after that changed the game. So then I was like, I need to start working with kids. So then that's when it just started, doing it on the outside, and kids just grabbed my heart. So I was like, I'm going to do it now. So that's where I'm at.
Couple of fun questions that we have and came up with. You do have your own podcast as well. It's on Spotify called #Todman Talks. Yeah. Can you speak and tell the audience a little bit about what started that and what you're working towards?
So what's appreciate the camera. What started that was just sharing some hardships, right? And then talking to my boy Damon, and we were talking about doing visuals of inspiration to help people get through. That kind of went well, and we got some good feedback on the videography, and then just started some Wisdom on a Wednesday, right? Because I used to do videos on Instagram, and the people were like, you should do a podcast. All right, let's see it. I asked him. He was like, yeah, it's a good idea. Went with it. I didn't expect the feedback, because sometimes people have podcasts as lessons, but we don't offer simple lessons and gems from our mistakes, right? And just leave it at that, right? So, and that has allowed people to reach out and said, hey, you don't realize how much that really spoke to me. And then I'm a heavy reader, so I'm reading this book, 2 books, How to Act and Think Bigger, and then How to Forgive What You Can't Forget. And that second book is the book that I feel everybody should read between 17 and 25. I wish it was given to me, because a lot of times we hold on to things that we just don't realize we are holding on to, and then that becomes how we navigate and go through life, right? So with that's where I was like, oh, maybe we should do Soulful Sundays and Kitchen Conversations, just to have that conversation about things that we don't talk about, and to help people through some difficulties. That's where it's at, and then each season we, see what happens and who feedbacks, and look at the Spotify for podcasters demographics, and then we'll be like, we're missing the mark with this. But right now that's how it started.
And just a final question. This is a little bit more fun as well. When we first met you, you were playing some jazz music in your office.
Jazz, yes.
You told us a little bit about your affinity towards it, but care to tell the audience about why jazz?
Oh, jazz. Jazz is the foundation of all music. People just don't know that. But jazz is soothing. right? And a lot of times we have unexpected anxieties, or we don't realize like we're in stressful environments, right? So in a coaching environment, sometimes it's stress, and sometimes you don't realize you're walking into stress. And then sometimes people, if you have people come to the office, that there is a weird vibe. Like some people like are uncomfortable, like they don't know what to expect. So jazz is it's a soothing music that sets the tone of invitation, right? So if you look at the history of jazz is always an invitation for people to have a good time and for people to be, right? So, and I just like jazz because jazz is cool. Ella Fitzgerald is my favorite singer, but it's just an invitation for, to sit down, be you, have a conversation, have some fun. So.
For sure. Do you listen to jazz in the gym? Or?
Yeah, that's it's crazy. Depending on the type of workout. Like if I'm running, jazz is in my ear, right? And like why? Because you have to have the soothing to take you into a zone, right? In running, you have to zone. You have to be in that zone, and you have to you cannot be anxious if you're trying to go in the zone, right? Because your heart rate's up. So I tend to listen to jazz as to level me out, right? Even if I'm lifting heavy, because there are days where I'm looking at what my coach programs me, and I'm like, this man is going to have me walking out here dead leg, right? So let me soothe myself, and I'll be sitting there jamming to, lifting weights to Louis Armstrong and Ella or, Duke. So,
right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us, Coach, and good luck to you moving forward and with the podcast and with the cross-country team.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and see what y'all working with in the future. But thank you.
And now it's time to preview the week ahead. This week, coming up, the Kean women's swim team will be taking on William Patterson in an NJAC matchup. NJAC matchups are always fun, always very exciting, and they very nearly come down to the wire.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in a matchup like this one, after Kean is coming off of a crazy momentum against D1 programs, they should cruise to a victory against William Patterson. We always seem to have their number in most sporting events.
Definitely. I'm excited to see how the team does. And, hopefully we come away with a win.
By the time this episode comes out, these two games will have already happened for men's and women's basketball, respectively. But this coming Wednesday, we have men and women playing basketball against Rutgers Newark. So those are two matchups to also keep an eye out for, especially the men's matchup. The men, of course, are 6-0, first time in a while that's happened. But Rutgers Newark does have the reigning NJAC Player of the Week in Quincy Rutherford. He dropped a triple. Never mind. He did. He dropped 32 points against NJCU, the number 24 team in the country.
Oh man, that'll be another exciting matchup. Kean, of course, does have several players that could probably be considered NJAC Players of the Week, but I'm excited to see how Kean fares against Rutgers Newark. Another NJAC matchup, so it's going to come down to the wire. And the same for the women's matchup. They have an exciting game against Rutgers Newark. They'll be the first of the two in that doubleheader. And, Rutgers Newark, they also have an NJAC Player of the Week in Samaya Horton.
Yeah, she was the Player of the Week for the week of the 22nd. She was the one who had the triple-double. Absolutely dominant for Rutgers Newark. So it'll be a challenge for both Coach Turco and Coach King to find a way to stop these two talented individuals.
Not only did she have a triple-double, though, it was a triple-double without the assist.
Yeah, it was 10 steals.
10 steals. So that's something that they'll have to look out for.
Crazy stuff. So definitely watch your dribbles around her. And Kean, of course, in both teams are coming off of at least 2-game win streak. So hopefully they can carry that over. Of course, the women being led by Shannon McCoy, men being led by Latrell West, scoring-wise. It should be a very, very fun matchup.
I had a great first episode with you, Jish. I'm looking forward to keeping up and going forward with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And If you guys really want to be looking forward to following your favorite sports teams, but maybe don't have the time to go to the games, we're going to be here all throughout the spring semester covering your Kean Cougars, no matter the sport. We got baseball coming up in the spring. We got lacrosses. We got men's volleyball, all exciting stuff, and you're not going to want to miss it. So please stay tuned. Stay subscribed to Cougar Culture. You're not going to want to miss it.
Definitely, Jish. And, this has been the Cougar Culture Podcast with Dorian and Jish. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.